Hi, welcome back to Spices by Mara. You got it, this is Mara again, and today we are going to talk about paprika, everything about paprika. Now, I would guess that if I asked you where paprika comes from, you might say it comes from Spain, it comes from Hungary, or maybe you say, I don't have the faintest idea where paprika comes from. That was the number one answer I got when I started asking people around. But I originally thought paprika came from Hungary, because that's where I really discovered paprika. Sure, I used paprika my whole life. I thought it was just to add color to anything, because the paprika that I bought at the grocery store really didn't have any taste. It certainly didn't taste peppery or anything, so you just sprinkled on the top of deviled eggs or in potato salad to give it that little spark of color, sprinkled it on the top of hummus, again, to give it some color. But no, when I went to tour Hungary and I went to the markets, there were mounds of paprika everywhere. Everywhere. And the paprika had a taste, an aroma, a peppery smell, a peppery taste. It was a total shock to me that paprika was different than how I grew up with it. And so I thought paprika is the spice of Hungary. It's in all of their dishes. Paprika must come from Hungary. But I'm wrong. I am definitely wrong. So how paprika is made, it takes peppers similar to our bell peppers, but they tend to be a little bit longer, but it's the same species. And it dries it in the sun or overheat, and then they grind it up. So just like when we were reading about and studying about black limes, and if you haven't watched that video, I have put a link for it right up there, we need to trace the history of peppers, just like we trace the history of limes. So peppers are indigenous to North America, to home. Central Mexico was eating peppers in 7000 BCE. That is a long time ago. And they were cultivating peppers by 3500 BCE. How it made it to Europe, a lot of people guess that Christopher Columbus brought peppers to Europe. And if it wasn't Christopher Columbus, it was certainly somebody else who was traveling in those areas, maybe a Spanish person who was looking and settled in Mexico brought them back, because we know that they are there by the 14th, 15th century. It was brought to Italy first by about 1432, and then it made it to Germany in 1543, and eventually made it to Hungary via the Balkans during the era of the Ottoman Empire. And we think that it got there in the late 1500s. And ever wonder why they're called peppers? I mean, peppers don't taste like what sweet peppers, bell peppers don't taste like what we think of putting pepper on our thing. Well, Christopher Columbus was traveling the world to find new spices and new trade routes. And the most important spice of all, that was the most expensive, was pepper. So he named these peppers to give them more cachet or something. Who knew? Now, peppers were originally just used in Europe for decoration. the royalty and the really, special people with a lot of money would grow them as decorative plants because they're beautiful. And because they thought that the fruit of the plant was poisonous. It's not. We all know that now, but they thought it was. And so for a long time, we did not see anybody cooking with them, and we didn't see anybody drying them and grinding them yet. Monks in southwest Spain began cultivating the peppers for commercial use in the 15th century. And that's where we begin to see some more eating of it after they were first used in the decorative earlier in the century. But they weren't used for cooking until the 19th century. So we are jumping quite a long time. From the first time the Mexicans were eating it in BCE, in 7000 BCE, we are not using the spice made from peppers to cook with until the 1800s. A really long time to figure that out. The first recorded use of paprika in an English recipe was in 1830s, and it showed up in recipes called pepper or paprika soup. In the 1800s, it became a staple for Hungarian peasants because it was so much cheaper than what we know as the black pepper. Again, we get back to the fact that this black pepper was so expensive and people couldn't afford it, so they would look for other ways, other types of spices to use instead. And so the peasants in Hungary started to use paprika as a substitute. This also tells me why, when I was reading this book about a ordinary housewife in the 1700s, early 1800s, who lived in Paprika, and it listed all of her recipes, I was shocked at the time to see that none of her recipes included paprika. But that's because she was taught by her mother, and by that time they weren't using paprika. It wasn't until the middle of the 1800s that they started using paprika in their stews and their paprikashes and their goulashes and all of those types of things. It's really sort of shocking, isn't it? You just sort of think it's been used there for years and years, and it's only been a short while in the history of cuisine. So today, the best known paprikas do come from Hungary and Spain. You can also buy paprika from Argentina, from Mexico, from Serbia, from China, the US, and the Netherlands. But it's really well known in Hungary and Spain. As I said, in Hungary, it's the national spice. They call a pepper paprika. They call the ground pepper paprika. Whereas in English, as you know, we call the plant, the fruit of the plant, a pepper, and we call the ground dried pepper paprika. Paprika gives dishes that bright orange color and intense peppery flavor and aroma that is just known in Hungarian cooking. There are different commercial grades of paprika in Hungary. It starts with delicate, and then it goes to noble sweet, then semi-sweet, then rosé, and finally hot. That is why Burlap and Barrel calls their sweet paprika noble sweet paprika. I thought they just had made up the noble name. I didn't realize it was actually a commercial grade that defines the amount of sweetness that is in the paprika. Very interesting, isn't it? How it is made is very interesting, and I cover that in another video where we also talk about how to use the paprika to make a mushroom paprikash. So go to the link up here in the corner and you can go learn all about Peter, our farmer, who is a third generation Hungarian paprikash farmer who dries and grinds his paprika to make this wonderful, noble paprika that we can buy today from Burlap and Barrel. It is known to be some of the world's best paprika. Burlap and Barrel also make another, or sell, they don't make it, Peter makes it, sells another kind of hot paprika. Now, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right. We got to remember that there's going to be a lot of words in this that are from Hungary, from Spain, and I sometimes have trouble with English words, so Hungarian words and Spanish words, not so much. So if I mangle them, apologies from the deepest part of my heart. Anyway, the half hot paprika is called Szezegi 178. Szezegi is spelled Szegedi. Hungarian is not an easy language. And it is called this because Peter uses an heirloom pepper called that, which is a hot pepper with a beautiful aroma and a long, warm burn. I don't really like hot paprika, but I do use this often in combination with my sweet paprika, just to give it just a little bit more of heat. He blends it after he dries it with the noble sweet paprika to give it a beautiful color and that long burn. And then in addition to Hungarian, we also have Spanish paprika. Now I'm gonna mess this pronunciation up too. Oh my goodness, now we're not even getting English words right. But in Spain, pimenton means paprika. Put the word up here so you can see how it is spelled. And there they have three kinds of paprika or pimenton. Dulce, which is sweet, a medium hot one, and a picante, which is hot. And that is made with several types of long red peppers. Paprika is a lot made, especially the smoked paprika, is made in the Extremadura area of Spain. That is in the southwest area of Spain, where those monks originally cultivated the peppers. You know, when things start, they just keep going in that area. So that area is just famous for making paprika. And it has a smoky taste because unlike Peter in Hungary, who dries his peppers in the sun, they put them in drying houses over oak wood, and it comes out with this very smoky flavor. And then they grind it after they have smoked it. Paprika from this region is actually a protected origin species from the European Union. It is like Parmesan and Roquefort and Champagne, that it is named for the region that it's come from, and it's called Pimenton La Vera. La Vera is a county within this area of Spain. And Burlap and Barrel's smoked paprika comes from this area. the very same area where the monks first cultivated peppers after Christopher Columbus brought it back. Now, the Spanish cuisine uses it in pork sausages. They also use it a lot in Basque heritage cooking, such as mussels and rice. You also find it in a starring role in French cuisine, in German, Portuguese, German, and Moroccan cuisine. You often see it in Middle Eastern cuisine on top of hummus and put into baba ganoush to enhance the smoked flavor of the eggplant. We add more smoked paprika to it. So paprika, although started in central Mexico, was brought to Europe, transferred all over Europe, is primarily made in these two main countries that absolutely love paprika. Tons and tons of spice profiles from around the world include paprika. And all of these countries, particularly Austria, Germany, Hungary, and France, use paprikas in their different kinds of stews and goulashes, which is basically a type of stew. Now, let's talk about the health value of paprika. Again, I always think of spice just primarily as something for cuisine, and I don't until recently, never really researched the health aspects of it. But paprika has an amazing amount of antioxidant ingredients or components to it. In fact, it originally was used, before they started using it in cooking, people in Hungary would use it as a medicine if you had intermittent fevers, because it turns out it has very high levels of vitamin A and vitamin C. It actually has 0.75% of your daily recommended consumption of vitamin A, just in 2 grams. Has 14, in that same 2 grams, it has 14% of your vitamin B6 and 10% of your vitamin. We absolutely know that it fights inflammation and diseases in general because of those high levels of vitamin A and vitamin C. So there's our history of paprika. You can go watch that other video to learn more about how the sweet paprika is harvested and dried, and then how to make mushroom paprikash. And maybe we'll explore some other recipes that really highlight paprika. But we know that because it's the spice profile in so many different countries, we're gonna see paprika show up in our recipes on this channel over and over and over again. So where should we go next? What spice should we explore next? I don't know. So you'll have to come back to our next video and see what spice we're going to cover next in our journey. Maybe it'll be cardamom. Maybe it'll be coriander. Maybe it'll be cinnamon. I don't know. I have to go back and do the research. But in the meantime, why don't you subscribe? That way you'll know for sure you won't miss any video. And if you want some of the world famous paprika made by Peter, or made in the region where the monks originally cultivated, go to Burlap and Barrel and buy some. I put the link down below, and if you click it and buy some, I get a couple cents. And that's just fun and helps offset the cost of this fun new hobby. So anyway, this is Mara from Spices by Mara, and I'll see you next time on our spice journey. Have a great day.